Anyone reusing anything is of course a terrible person who should be called out immediately because, you know, like, we've never ever reused anything for any reason, ever. Basically what we're saying is that sometimes reusing stuff just makes perfect sense. Now, you don't want to, like, be all up in somebody's face about it. So, with that in mind, I'm Sean Ferrick for TrekCulture, and here are 10 times Star Trek reused ships, and hoped you wouldn't notice. Number 10. Romulan Scout Ship, Science Vessel, NERADA. The Romulan Scout Ship was designed by Rick Sternbach, debuting in the Defector. The design was based on Andrew Probert's earlier Dideridex-class warbird, echoing the green colour scheme, wingspan and forward module. This initial design was more obviously a small support vessel, evidenced by cockpit windows at the front. The next phase would then introduce the Romulan Science Vessel. For this, the studio model was altered, with the forward module being changed, and the more obvious cockpit design being removed. At the aft of the ship, a hammerhead-style crescent was added, this time serving as a section similar to the sensor pod on a Nebula-class ship. The ship would then return in Favourite Son. This time, the only significant change was to the colour of the ship. Sternbach himself was less than thrilled with the model's continual changes, lamenting that once the designs left his desk, he had no control over what happened to them. When it came to the Science Vessel, and the NERADA specifically, these were quite obviously the same design, a Romulan one, and stood out in the episode. Number 9. Mercenary Ship, MIRADORN Raider, TARESIAN Ship. The distinctive vessel that debuted in the episode Vortex is perhaps best recognised as Arctis Baran's pirate ship, despite that being its second appearance. The MIRADORN Raider Theta class was designed by Ricardo F. Delgado and was labelled as an alien concept or a raptor. The design, striking as it was, inevitably returned. Gambit sees Picard and Riker taken captive aboard the vessel, which at this point is described as roughly 1/4 the length of the Enterprise D. For this instance, there may actually have been an on-screen explanation as to the reuse of the design. With Baran commanding a mercenary crew, they may simply have stolen or paid outright for a MIRADORN Raider. What is a little harder to explain is the return of the vessel in the Delta Quadrant. Here it takes the form of a Taresian ship, making it another reused studio model to appear in the episode Favourite Son. The ship saw no adjustments, either in outward design or relative scale, to suggest that this was simply a similar shape of ship. At least the Romulan Science ship went through a colour change. Number 8. Federation Fighter, KRALOR Warship. Jim Martin designed the Federation fighter for the Deep Space Nine episode The Maquis. It was built with Star Wars as an inspiration, something Doug Drexler would later joke gave people acid indigestion. The model would return in Preemptive Strike, again used by the Maquis, before they would make their debut as true Federation vessels in A Time to Stand. For these uses, having the ship appear with the Maquis and Starfleet suggested that these vessels had simply been co-opted by the terrorist organisation, so having them play multiple roles made sense. Slightly more difficult to explain, once again, was their appearance in the Delta Quadrant. In Nightingale, Harry Kim takes command of a KRALOR medical ship that bears a striking resemblance to these small attack ships. The design was altered to give the Nightingale a larger feel, adding decks to the ship via multiple lights, along with the suggestion of a beefier engine. The ship would return a second time in Voyager, though this is somewhat excusable. In The Void, an Anari warship bearing the same configuration is encountered by Voyager, though the Anari had been established as combatants within a war with the KRALOR in the earlier episode. Much like the Klingons and Romulans, who's to say there weren't some shared ideas between the two? Number 7. KAREMMA ship, Bajoran Impulse ship, ANTARIAN ship. The KAREMMA ship was designed by John Eves for Deep Space Nine in the episode Starship Down. It was constructed as a physical model and as a CGI model, with the latter returning several times during the franchise. Despite the KAREMMA being Gamma Quadrant dwellers, their ship turned up in both the Alpha and Delta quadrants. Shadows and Symbols sees Colonel Kira form a blockade around the Bajoran moon Derna, with her fleet containing 2 such vessels. In notes that were excised from the episode, it was suggested that these may in fact have been KAREMMA ships left behind by the Dominion. The CGI model would then go on to appear in the episode Drive, this time portraying an Antarian vessel that rendezvous with Voyager. It also appears as an unnamed alien ship in Natural Law as well. The CGI made its final to-date appearance as a transport vessel in Enterprise, a good 200 years before Starfleet encountered the KAREMMA or the discovery of the Bajoran wormhole. Great minds. Number 6. GROUMALL, NEKRIT freighter, Klingon cargo ship. The GROUMALL freighter was one of John Eve's first designs upon working for Star Trek. Being a Cardassian design, he took initial inspiration from Rick Sternbach's GALOR-class warships, beginning with a similar forward section. However, the producers weren't too keen on this idea. They wanted the freighter to have a more industrial look. Eves flipped the design, softening the wings from the GALOR class and dipped them. The distinctive Cardassian fork was now at the front of the ship, with huge cargo boxes making up the bulk of the core. The bridge was moved to the back of the ship, taking inspiration from real-world oil tankers. The studio model was then built, first appearing in the episode Return to Grace. It would return repainted in the Voyager episode Fair Trade. Later, Sons and Daughters saw it adapt a final time to become Klingon in nature. It was given another new paint job, with new warp engines added to the aft wings. The effects manager for the episode, David Stipes, wasn't too keen on the reuse, adapted as it was by Tony Meininger. He rationalised that the use of the design, as though the Klingons had captured these Cardassian freighters as trophies of war. Number 5. Klingon D7 Battlecruiser, Romulan Battlecruiser. The ship that would come to be known as the D7 class battlecruiser, designed by Matt Jeffries, had a very unusual start in life. It was designed at the urging of AMT models so that they might have a companion model to market alongside their model kit of the USS Enterprise. As such, it was the reverse of most processes. The toy came first before the ship would fly. Jeffries recalled that he worked on the design at home as there was neither time nor budget to do so at the studio. After numerous attempts, he based the ship on a manta ray, and the ship was almost done. The first shots of the model were done for the episode Elan of THRICE, firmly establishing it as a Klingon vessel. However, the model, which had delighted producers for the original series' third season, was quickly inserted wherever possible, including as a Romulan vessel in the Enterprise incident. A scheduling mix-up meant that this new Klingon ship, designed around Klingon people to be marketed as a Klingon battlecruiser, was shown first as a Romulan ship. The remastered versions of the original series fixed this by introducing the ship a little earlier and giving those seen in the Enterprise incident a more distinctly Romulan pattern underneath. But this was a model that had one of the strangest journeys to screen in the entire franchise. Number 4. TARELLIAN plague ship, KTARIAN vessel. The distinctive TARELLIAN plague ship that appeared in Haven was one of designer Andrew Probert's favourite projects for the Next Generation. He recalled that, after the Enterprise itself, this model gave him some of his fondest memories, as it had been a collaboration with Gene Roddenberry himself. Probert had become stuck when it came to the overall design. He knew that he wanted it to be different from the standard engines at the back shape that tended to dominate starships, so he came up with the idea of placing the engines at the front of the ship. He also based his design on Herman Zimmerman's plans for the main bridge, allowing him to build around it. It was Roddenberry who suggested moving the power source to the middle of the ship, which led to the spherical design as seen in the episode. This would be the only appearance of the ship in this configuration. The nose was subsequently altered to sport a more triangular shape, while the hull was removed from the ship's centre, then covered with deck plating. In this shape, it returned several more times, including as the KTARIAN vessel in the game, the Hunter's ship in Captive Pursuit, and the Zalconian ship in Transfigurations. Number 3. Promelian battlecruiser, Skrian ship. This particular model is the most unusual on this list, as it wasn't even designed for Star Trek to begin with. It was, in fact, designed by Steve Berg for the 1986 B-movie Night of the Creeps. In that fact, the model was shown in a single scene, floating over a graveyard. As it would not be presented in full relief, only the ventral side was given any detail. Once filming was completed, David Stipes came into possession of the model. When the script for Booby Trap came through, with precious little time to design the new ship that was called for, Stipes stepped in and loaned Trek the model. Interestingly, while Gregory Jean was normally responsible for building the new ship, he and his company were busy working on The Hunt for Red October, in which Gates McFadden appeared while on her gap year from Star Trek. The production team would significantly alter the model, flipping it so that the ventral side in the film would serve as the dorsal side in the episode. It would be filmed once again for Deep Space Nine for the episode Sanctuary, serving as the Skrian ship, with stock footage of this being used as Nogra's shuttle in Sons of Moog and as an unnamed alien ship in The Muse. Number 2. Tamarian Deep Space Cruiser, KLAESTRON Starship. The ship began its life in the episode Suddenly Human. Rick Sternbach based the design on Coast Guard training ships with 2 solar-powered sails above and below the vessel. The pointed nose of the ship would end up being the section that lasted for each alteration. First, the ship was given a mild refit to appear as a Keosian ship in The Perfect Mate. The heaviest modification came when it was altered to become the TAMARIAN deep space cruiser, which debuted in the episode Darmok. Here, additional nacelle struts were added to the port and starboard with a red hue. This configuration would return in Deep Space Nine as both the KLAESTRON and TILANI vessels, before appearing in Voyager as an imaginary Bothan ship and a DRAEN cruiser as well. After the initial refit to include the nacelles, the model largely remained of the same configuration, with simple changes like the colour of the nacelles, though for its appearance as the DRAEN starship, the nacelles themselves were given a mild change as well. Number 1. TELLARITE Cruiser XINDI Arboreal Cruiser. John Eves designed the vessel that would appear in Enterprise, used periodically by 3 different alien species. First, it appeared as the Arconian destroyer in Dawn. The ship was realised entirely in CGI, which presented Eves with an opportunity to use null space in its design. Design work for the Romulan Valdor warbird had included a gap behind the head, so Eves reused the idea for this vessel. The problem with physical models, Eves commented, was that this type of ornamentation could lead to lighting issues. That wasn't a concern on CGI models. As often happened with his designs, Eves then found his Arconian destroyer returning as the XINDI Arboreal ship, minus the blaster from the underside of the ship, joining the XINDI fleet. The ship would then see an updated colour scheme for its next appearance as the TELLARITE ship in Enterprise's 4th season. This seems to be the allegiance that has stuck with the design, as a TELLARITE sleeper ship of this configuration was seen in Star Trek Prodigy as well. Now that's everything for our list today, folks. Which ships do you think were missed off this list? Let us know in the comments below, and of course let us know over on social media. You can catch us on Twitter at TrekCulture, and you can catch us on Instagram at TrekCultureYT. You can catch myself at Sean Ferrick on the various socials too. Thank you so much to our wonderful video editor Martin for going through this and making it look pretty. Folks, you are awesome and wonderful. Make sure that you live long and prosper till I'm talking to you again. Stay frosty, stay wonderful, and if you're going to get reused, try and stand out a little, yeah? Make it so. Thanks.